topic is proteins. In the last two classes, I have discussed about amino acids and peptides. So today's lecture is about proteins. Mainly two topics: classification of proteins and structure of proteins. So first I am going to discuss about classification of proteins. Proteins are classified on the basis of different aspects like shape and structure, then composition, then based on biological functions. So proteins are classified on the basis of shape and structure, then on the basis of composition and on the basis of biological functions. On the basis of shape and structure, proteins are classified into fibrous proteins and globular proteins. Fibrous proteins are like elongated fiber. Their shape and structure is like elongated fiber. You can see here, it is like elongated fiber. And they have a long axial ratio. Long axial ratio means length to width. That ratio, length divided by width. Length to width, that ratio, that is called axial ratio. That axial ratio is more, that is around greater than 10 in the case of fibrous protein. And they are generally not soluble in aqueous solvents. And in the case of globular proteins, here it is having a spheroidal shape or ellipsoidal shape in the case of globular proteins. These protein chains, the polypeptide chains are folded around each other and they have a spheroid or ellipsoid shape, or they have low axial ratio. That length to width ratio is low, that is around 3 to 4. So that is the classification on the basis of shape and structure. Then next classification is on the basis of composition. On the basis of composition, proteins are classified into simple proteins, conjugated proteins and derived proteins. Simple proteins, conjugated proteins and derived proteins. Simple proteins, they contain only amino acid units. They are proteins which contain only amino acid units. But these simple proteins are again classified into different groups, or they can be different types based on their certain properties like their solubility, whether they are soluble in aqueous solvents or whether they are soluble in water or insoluble, or whether they are soluble in acids or dilute acids or alkali, or whether they are coagulated on heating. So based on these properties, they are classified into, or they are grouped into different types like albumins, globulins, prolamins, glutenins, scleroproteins, histamines and protamins. Okay, so these are the different types based on this solubility property, their coagulation, whether they are coagulate on heating. Okay, based on these properties, they are grouped into different types. That is about simple proteins. So simple proteins which contain only amino acid units. Then next one is conjugated proteins. Conjugated proteins, they contain not only amino acid unit, that is not only protein part, they contain, or they are conjugated to a non-protein part. That is, they have a non-protein part along with the protein part. And this non-protein part is called prosthetic group. Okay, the non-protein part is called prosthetic group. And depending upon this non-protein part, that is non-protein part means other than amino acids. Okay, other than amino acid, that is called a non-protein part. And based on this non-protein part or prosthetic group, these conjugated proteins are again classified into different types like nucleoproteins, glycoproteins, etc. In the case of nucleoproteins, the prosthetic group is nucleic acid like RNA or DNA. In the case of glycoproteins, it is the non-protein part is a carbohydrate. In the case of phosphoproteins, it is phosphoric acid. In the case of lipoproteins, it is lipid. In the case of chromoprotein, it is the non-protein part is a color giving group. Color giving group, like in the case of hemoglobin, the non-protein part is heme. And generally, this color giving part generally contains metal ions like iron, magnesium. Iron in the case of hemoglobin, we know that. then chlorophyll, which contain magnesium. So these chromoproteins generally contain metal ions. So these are conjugated proteins. So conjugated proteins contain not only the protein part, it also contain non-protein part. Okay. The next one is based on composition is derived proteins. Derived proteins are proteins which are derived from the above two, that is, which are derived from simple proteins and conjugated proteins. They are derived from the simple proteins and conjugated proteins. That is called derived, or that are derived proteins, that are deriving from the above proteins. For example, on protein hydrolysis or protein digestion, we get different products on primary, secondary, different products in each stage. Like protein hydrolysis, long proteins, long polypeptides are shortened into oligopeptides, or short peptides like dipeptides, tripeptides, etc. So these are all derived proteins. Or other products like proteoses, then peptones. These are all the product on protein digestion. So these are all derived proteins. So derived proteins are proteins which are obtained from simple proteins and conjugated proteins. Okay. Then third classification is on the basis of biological function. Okay. So first classification is based on shape and structure. Second classification is based on composition. And third classification is based on biological function. That is, based on biological functions, proteins are again classified into enzymes, storage proteins, regulatory proteins, structural proteins, mobile proteins, then protective proteins, then transport proteins. And you know that as a name itself define what is its function. Enzyme proteins means they are biological catalysts. They are catalyzing the biochemical functions in the body. Okay, they are biological catalyst enzymes. So their function is catalyzing the biological functions in the body. And storage proteins. Storage protein. Next one is storage protein. Storage protein, for example, myoglobin. Myoglobin, its function is oxygen storage. Okay, then regulatory protein. For example, in the case of hormones like insulin, they are regulating the carbohydrate metabolism. Okay, regulatory proteins. Then structural proteins. Structural protein, for example, keratin of hair or nail. Okay, these proteins give support to the structure. Okay, so they are called structural proteins. Then contractile or mobile proteins. For example, actin, that protein that helps for the heart muscle movement. Then protective or defense protein. For example, antibodies. They protect the body from infections. Then transport proteins. Transport proteins, for example, hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, its function is oxygen transport. So based on the biological functions, proteins are again classified into these enzyme, storage protein, regulatory, structural, mobile, defense and transport proteins. So these are the different classification of proteins, that is based on shape and structure, based on composition and based on biological functions. Then next I am going to discuss about is the structure of proteins. So two sections I want to discuss in this class, that is classification of proteins and structure of proteins. So classification of proteins, that is, I think it's clear. The next one is structure of proteins. When we talk about the structure of proteins, actually it is having different levels. Okay, the protein's structure can be explained, or we can see there are different levels for the structure of proteins. That is primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary. There are different levels for the structure of proteins. Primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary. Okay, and primary structure gives information about the amino acid sequence. How the different amino acids, you can see here around 25 amino acids are connected together using peptide bond. So primary structure, it talks about how these amino acids are arranged. After that is, for example, whether glycine is attached to alanine or whether glycine is attached to phenylalanine Okay, so which one is attached to other? So how the sequence is going? That is about primary structure. Okay, so in order to find the primary structure, or in order to explain what is its primary structure, there are different methods to find the primary structure, or there are different methods to find or to analyze how these amino acids are arranged. Okay, so which are the amino acids are present, which are the amino acids at the end, or in between, or on first. So there are different methods for finding the amino acid sequence. So that is called end group analysis. So end group analysis is a method for finding the amino acid sequence. So in this case, generally what we are doing is, we are finding the amino acid which is present at the end. Okay, which is amino acid present at the end. So from the end we are finding which is amino acid present at the end. So we are analyzing the what is at the end, and after cleaving or after obtaining the end one, we get another chain, and again we are doing the same procedure repeatedly. So in that way we can step by step we can find which one is at the end, or in that manner we can get idea about complete amino acid sequence. So this method is called end group analysis. Okay, end group analysis. So in the case of end group analysis, as you know, in the case of peptides, there is a C terminal and an N terminal. Okay, NH2, CH2, COH. For example, glycine amino acid. So NH2, CH2, COH. So there is an N terminal and there is a C terminal. Okay, N terminal and C terminal. So N group analysis means determination of N terminal amino acid and C terminal amino acid. Because in the case of peptide, the end one is, in one side it is COH, in the other side it is NH2. So N group analysis involves determination of N terminal amino acid and C terminal amino acid. So first one is the identification of N terminal amino acid. Identification of N terminal amino acid. So there are different methods. The important two methods is, first one is Sanger's method and other one is Edman's degradation method. Sanger's method and Edman's degradation method. And this is Sanger's method. This Frederick Sanger is proposed this method, and he is a Nobel laureate. He won Nobel Prize in 2 times. First one is for finding the sequence in nucleic acid, and second one is for finding the sequence in the case of amino acids. So he got Nobel Prize in 2 times, Frederick Sanger. And this is Sanger's method. And in this, the reagent used is 2,4-dinitrofluorobenzene. 2,4-dinitrofluorobenzene. This is a reagent used, and here this on reaction with the peptide. This is a peptide, polypeptide or protein. This on reaction with the peptide. What happens is that this HF will eliminate, hydrogen fluoride will eliminate, and this remaining portion will added to here, that is here. You can see the remaining portion is added to this benzene ring. By eliminating the HF, we get this product. And this on hydrolysis, what happens is, all the peptide bond or all the amide bond, here it is peptide bond. All the peptide bond undergo hydrolysis. So undergo hydrolysis, that is here there is a peptide bond and here there is a peptide bond. Okay, so here it is, this bond undergo hydrolysis, we get CO group become COH, that is COH, and this NH now become NH2. Similarly, this CO group is again COH and this NH now become NH2. That is, we get 3 products. By cleavage of the 2 bond, we get 3 products, and these 3 products can be separated by chromatography. We can separate by chromatography and we can analyze what are the different 3 products. And on analyzing, we get a clear understanding that one is an amino acid derivative. One is a derivative of 2,4-dinitrobenzene and the other 2 are amino acids. 2 are amino acid and one is a 2,4-dinitro derivative. So that 2,4-dinitro derivative product, or that product, that is definitely an amino acid derivative, that 2,4-dinitrobenzene derivative, and that will be the terminal amino acid. Okay, or that will be the terminal end of terminal. That is, here in the case of protein, there is a N terminal and a C terminal. N terminal and C terminal. This is not completed. This is actually it's going. It's a polypeptide. This chain is going, and here it is the one end is NH2 and other end is COH. And from this analysis, we get the clear image that this N terminal and this N terminal is this one, or this group containing is a N terminal. So in this way we can find which one is a terminal amino acid. Okay, this is one method, that is Sanger's method. So in the case of Sanger's method, the reagent used is 2,4-dinitrofluorobenzene. This on reaction with protein, the protein that NH2 end or N terminal containing that NH2, that hydrogen will go with this F, that HF will eliminate, this HF will eliminate and we get the product, and which on hydrolysis all the peptide bond will undergo hydrolysis and we get three different products, and from these three different products on chromatographic separation and followed by analysis, we get a clear image that this one is this 2,4-dinitrobenzene derivative is a terminal end. Okay, so that is called a Sanger's method. Another one is Edmann's degradation method. Edmann's degradation method. In this, the reagent used is phenyl isothiocyanate. Phenyl isothiocyanate is a reagent used in Edmann's degradation method. This is phenyl isothiocyanate. Here also this reagent on reaction with the protein or polypeptide under pH 8 or under basic condition, what happens is that here the reaction happens across this C double bond N, and there is a base, and base will definitely abstract this hydrogen from this NH2, and the remaining part will add it to this carbon, and later this hydrogen will add it to this, and we get this product. Okay, this reaction happens across this C double bond N, and this NH2 will react to this carbon, that NH will add to this carbon, and the hydrogen which is carried by which is taken away, the base will add to this nitrogen, and we get this product. And this product on hydrolysis, for the simple understanding, I told like this, that is this product on hydrolysis. Actually, the mechanism, there are two different steps. I don't want to discuss that steps here. On simple method, we can say like this, that is on hydrolysis. Here also this peptide bond, this NHCO bond will undergo hydrolysis, and we get COH and NH2. That is NH2. That is a product. NH2 peptide. That is protein part. That will cleave away this product. We get this product, and the remaining part is COH. That COH, that product will easily that COH product formed will undergo cyclization with this NH hydrogen, that eliminates a molecule of water. That added water will eliminate, that is from OH from here, hydrogen from here, and it undergoes cyclization with this carbon, and we get this product. That is nitrogen will undergo cycle with will form cycle with this carbon. That is, this product will form as a side product. So two products. This one is a side product, and the remaining part is an oligopeptide. Okay, that is polypeptide is decomposed into a short peptide, oligopeptide. So the advantage of this method is that in the case of previous method, you notice that in that case we get different all the peptide bonds are undergo hydrolysis, and we get three products. Okay, three products. Here the advantage is that here only the terminal portion, only the terminal end is hydrolyzed, and we get the product, and the remaining portion is like oligopeptide. In the before case, all the peptide bonds are hydrolyzed, and we get different three products. Okay, here only the terminal one is cleaved, or terminal one is undergo reaction to give side product, and the remaining one is an oligopeptide. And if we repeat this step, if we repeat this procedure, that is, if we again treat this product, this oligopeptide, which is phenyl isothiocyanate, what happens? Again, similar procedure will go on, and we get again the terminal group will react and we get the side product. So in this manner, what is a sequence of different amino acids can be easily find out, because each step when we repeat each time, the terminal end will leave. Okay, in that way we can find what is the amino acid sequence. So that is Edman's degradation method. So in the case of Edman's degradation method, we are using phenyl isothiocyanate as a reagent. So this reagent on reaction with the protein, the reaction carries across this C double bond N and this NH2 nitrogen. NH2, this base, in the presence of base, that is at pH 8, the reaction is going on, and this hydrogen will go with this nitrogen, and the remaining NH will add to this carbon, and we get this product. Okay, this product, and this on hydrolysis eliminates a product, a cyclic product, by eliminates a molecule of water, and the remaining we get a oligopeptide. That is, here on hydrolysis, what happens across this CONH bond? This hydrolysis will take place across this CONH, and here one OH and here is NH2. So this NH2 is this product, and this CO now becomes COH, and that COH, that carbon will undergo cyclization with this nitrogen by eliminate a molecule of water from OH from this COH and hydrogen from this NH, and we get side product like this. So in this method, the advantage is that the product obtained, that is oligopeptide obtained on further reaction or further repeating the same step, we can get we can get an idea of the different amino acid sequence, because on each time the end group will leave as a cyclic product and the remaining will get as a short peptide. So if we repeat the step, we can get a clear idea of how these different amino acids are sequentially arranged. So this is Edman's degradation method. So above method is for finding the end terminal, that is NH2 end. The other one is identification of C terminal. Identification of C terminal, that is COH end. There is an NH2 end and there is a COH end. So COH end or C terminal identification. There are two methods again. There are different methods, two important methods. Carboxy peptidase method and Akabori method. In Akabori method, the reagent used is hydrazine. Reagent used in hydrazine, that is anhydrous hydrazine. Anhydrous hydrazine is heated with this protein at 100 degrees Celsius. What happens is that here also the reaction happens across the peptide bond. Reaction happens across the peptide bond, that is CONH bond. And this CONH bond, across this CONH bond, reaction happens. And this NH2, that is hydrogen. For simplicity, I can tell like this. That is this H plus and there is NH2 minus. Then H plus will go to this NH minus, and this carbon is now having carbon plus. Carbonyl carbon is now having positive, and to the positively carbon, this NH2 minus will go with this carbonyl carbon plus. So we get the product like this, that is CO with NH2. This is NH2 minus. NH2 minus will go with this C plus. So the product will now become CONH2, and here this H plus will go with this NH, and now this becomes CONH2, and this portion now become NH2, and the bond is cleaved here. So we get different product. Similarly, here also this CO will go with NH2, and CO now becomes CONH2, and this NH now become NH2. That is, these two bonds are cleaved and we get different products. And these two are hydroxides because CONH2. CONH2, this is hydroxide. This is also a hydroxide, and this is an amino acid. This is an amino acid. So from this method, we get an idea that this one is a terminal amino acid, because other two products are hydroxides. One is an amino acid, and that amino acid will be the terminal amino acid, because here this R can be different types. So by depending upon the R, nature of the R, these amino acid can be of different types. So by analyzing this terminal amino acid, we can find which is a that is by varying the R, and by analyzing that amino acid, we can get an idea of the terminal amino acid. That is Akabori method. That is for finding the C terminal. Before one is a N terminal, this is a C terminal method. Finding the C terminal. Okay, here the peptide, polypeptide or protein is heated with hydrazine and hydrazine at 100 degrees Celsius, and the reaction happens across this peptide bond, and this hydrazine will react across this peptide bond, and we get hydroxides and amino acids. So from that, by chromatographic separation and by analyzing which one is a terminal amino acids can be easily determined. So this is one method. Then another method is carboxypeptidase method. In carboxypeptidase method, carboxypeptidase is an enzyme. It is an enzyme secreted by the it is a pancreatic enzyme, pancreatic gland and pancreas. And this enzyme on reaction with or on action with this protein or polypeptide, these enzymes are selective catalysts. Enzymes are selective catalysts, so the enzyme selectively react, or it will act only on the terminal peptide bond. Okay, it will act terminally, selectively on the terminal peptide bond. So this is a different amino acids unit. This one is, suppose this one is a terminal one. So this enzyme will act selectively on the terminal peptide bond. That is, hydrolysis happens at the terminal peptide bond. So this is, suppose this is extended. This is a long chain polypeptide, and this is a C terminus. Here it is COH, and other end is NH2. So this is a C terminus. So from this is a terminal peptide bond. So reaction happens. So this enzyme will enzyme hydrolysis will take place across this terminal peptide bond, and this CO now becomes COH, and this becomes NH2. That is, this becomes COH and NH2. This bond is cleaved, and we get COH and NH2. And from this, by separation and by identification, which one is a terminal amino acid can be easily understood. Okay, so this is carboxypeptidase method. So these are the different methods for finding the primary structure. So primary structure is, what is primary structure? It talks about the amino acid sequence, how the amino acids are sequentially arranged, or which are the different amino acids present in the protein. Okay, so for that, predicting the primary structure, we need to find which are the different amino acids. So for that, we need certain methods to find out how these amino acids are arranged. For that, the method used is called end group analysis. So end group analysis, there are two types of end. One is N terminal and other is C terminal. And end group analysis for the end group analysis for the C terminal, and also end terminal analysis for the N terminal. Okay, see, for the C terminal and also for the N terminal. And for the C terminal, one is carboxypeptidase method and other one is Akabori method using hydrazine reagent. And for the N terminal, Edman's degradation method using phenyl isothiocyanate as a reagent, and Sanger's method using 2,4-dinitroplurovenzene. So these are the different methods for the identification of primary structure. The next one is about the secondary structure. So in the case of primary structure, we are finding how the amino acids are sequentially arranged, or the primary structure is about the amino acid sequence. And it is not mentioned. It is nothing about it. It is not mentioned about its shape or structure. Okay, that is, primary structure is not mentioned about the shape or structure. It only mentioned about how these amino acids are sequentially arranged. So in the case of secondary structure, here you can see different shapes. In the case of secondary structure mentioned about how these amino acids are arranged and giving a particular shape, how how this amino acid sequence or how the polypeptide chain give a fixed shape to the protein. Okay, how this amino acid sequence or polypeptide chain giving a fixed shape. Whether it is a fixed shape means whether it is like a helix or whether it is like a pleated sheet. Pleated sheet means like you heard about sari pleats. Okay, so whether these polypeptides are turned like a helix or it is like a pleats. Okay, pleated sheet. So that is about secondary structure. And there are two models are proposed. First one is a helix model or it is called alpha helix, and second proposed method is beta form or beta pleated sheet. And in the case of helix model, this polypeptide chain, you can see polypeptide chain. It is uniformly wound around a imaginary axis or wound around a central axis. It is uniformly wound around a imaginary or a central axis in such a way that it is uniformly arranged in such a way that which means that in one complete turn around 3.7 amino acid units are in one turn. Around 3.7 amino acid units are there in one complete turn. Similarly, the distance between two complete turns is around 5.7 angstrom. Okay, which means that it is uniformly arranged around the central axis and give this alpha helix model. And here there is a hydrogen bond. You can see also there is a hydrogen bond between this NH hydrogen and this CO oxygen. Okay, CO oxygen and this NH hydrogen are hydrogen bonded. That is intramolecular hydrogen bonding is also there. That is with the first amino acid unit and fourth amino acid unit. Consider the NH hydrogen of the first amino acid and the CO oxygen of the fourth amino acid units. And in between there is a intramolecular hydrogen bonding is also present. And this intramolecular hydrogen bonding, that is actually that is a reason why it remain as fixed shape, because we know that there are several single bond carbon and carbon nitrogen single bonds are present here, so free rotation is possible. But because of this intramolecular hydrogen bonding, this free rotation is not possible and it remain as a helix or it is having a fixed shape. So that's about helix model. Then next one is a beta pleated sheet. A beta model, pleated sheet in which these polypeptide chains are like pleats. They are arranged like pleats, and these pleats can be like parallel or anti-parallel. Parallel means they are in the same direction. This when we look at these terminal ends, they are in parallel direction. You can see here. Here it is like parallel, and anti-parallel means they are in the opposite directions. Okay, anti-parallel. So these sheets, pleated sheets, like they are arranged like pleats, and they can be like parallel or they can be like anti-parallel. Okay, it can be like anti-parallel or it can be like parallel. Okay, so that is a pleated sheet model. And here also there is hydrogen bonding and hydrogen bonding. Here you can see this hydrogen bonding, and this hydrogen bonding is responsible for this pleated sheet. Okay, hydrogen bonding is responsible for this pleated sheet. Okay, so that is about the secondary structure. The next one is tertiary structure of proteins. And here it is a simple picture. Here you can see there is helix, and also this green indicates pleated sheets. Okay, pleated sheets. Okay, so helix and pleated sheets. And in the case of tertiary structure, these helix and pleated sheets, they are connected together or they are bonded together and give another shape called tertiary structure. Okay, they are connected together, they are bonded together. That is helix and this pleated sheet, they are bonded together. There are different types of bonds like ionic bond, van der Waals force, or this hydrogen bond, hydrophobic interaction. A number of forces can be there, and as a result of these type of force of attraction, this helix and this pleated sheet, they are connected together, they are bonded together and gives a tertiary structure. That is tertiary structure like it is like a fibrous protein, elongated fiber, or they can be like globular proteins, like spheroid or ellipsoidal in shape. Okay, so that is about tertiary structure. So in the case of tertiary structure, there are different types of forces of attraction is possible. That is why these are all folded. These secondary helix and these secondary pleated sheet, they are all folded together by means of certain force of attraction, and as a result, the resultant structure like fibrous protein or globular protein. Okay, and that is generally called tertiary structure. And what are the different forces of attraction, or what are the different types of bond? Here it is schematically shown here the different forces. Like this is, you can see this hydrophobic interaction. There are here alkyl groups. So here hydrophobic interaction is possible. Here there is hydrogen bond, and in some amino acids there are sulfur groups. Sulfur group is present in some cases. Some of the amino acids contain sulfur group. So in that case, there is a possibility of disulfide bridge. Okay, and there is anic bond also. That is NH3 plus and CO minus citraniform is there. So there is anic bond can be formed. So there are different forces of attractions or different mode of bonding is possible, and as a result, this tertiary structure, we will get the tertiary structure. Okay, the next one is the quaternary structure. Quaternary structure. Quaternary structure, it is only for certain proteins. For example, myoglobin have up to tertiary structure. But if you take hemoglobin have quaternary structure. That is, if the number of subunits is more, that is, if the number of subunits, number of polypeptide chains is more, if n number of subunits are there, these n number of subunits are again folded, or again they are come together by certain force of attraction and forms the quaternary structure. This is the structure of hemoglobin. Here you can see 4 different subunits. Here it is schematically shown 4 different subunits. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 subunits are present. And this is the hemoglobin. For the hemoglobin, there is heme part and globin part. And that globin part is a protein part, globin part. So this is a globin part, and inside you can see here this one pink color. This pink color shows the heme part. And this is a heme part that you study in the inorganic portion. This is a heme part. There is iron is in the central. There is iron, and that iron is coordinated, or that iron is bonded to the amino acid. Here you can see the amino acid, and this iron is bonded to the amino acid of the protein part, or amino acid of this globin part. So there are 4 hemes here. This pink color shows 4 hemes. And this 4 heme, there is iron is at the center, and iron is coordinated to the amino acid of the globin part, this protein part. Okay, so quaternary structure means if there are n number of subunits, these subunits again folded together and results in quaternary structure. And in the case of hemoglobin, there are 4 subunits. Here you can see 4 subunits, 2 alpha chain and 2 beta chain. Okay, 2 alpha chain and 2 beta chain is present in the case of hemoglobin. And here also you can see this is a heme. This yellow part is shows here, and that is heme. Okay, so 2 alpha and 2 beta chain is present in the case of hemoglobin, and this hemoglobin contain the heme part which contain iron. Then iron is bonded to the amino acid of this globin part. Okay, so that is all about the quaternary structure. That is all about the different structures of protein. So primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary structure, and quaternary structure. So these are the different structures. So primary structure talks about the different amino acid sequence. Okay, primary structure. Secondary structure, there are 2 models are proposed. Secondary structure mentioned about the fixed shape of the polypeptide chain. Whether it is a helix or whether it is a pleated sheet. Okay, whether it is a helix or it can be a pleated sheet. That is about secondary structure. And tertiary means this is a 3-dimensional structure. And this 3-dimensional structure that is different alpha helix and this beta pleated sheets, they come together or they can be folded together through different forces of attraction like anti-bond, van der Waals force, then hydrophobic interactions, disulfide linkage, etc. So by means of different forces of attraction, these helix and beaded sheath can come together and they can be folded and give a three-dimensional structure. And this three-dimensional structure can be a spheroidal-like or it can be elongated fiber-like. Okay, so it can be fibrous protein or it can be like a globular protein. So that's about the tertiary structure. So it talks about the three-dimensional arrangement. And last one is the quaternary structure. It is complex and it is for some proteins have this quaternary structure. For example, in the case of hemoglobin have this quaternary structure because hemoglobin contain more number of a number of polypeptide chains are present. So it is a complex structure and this hemoglobin have this quaternary structure and it contains 4 subunits and these 4 subunits are connected together through certain force of attraction and we get the quaternary structure. So that's all about the structure of protein. So today in this class, I discussed about the classification of proteins, different classification of proteins based on different aspects and also discussed about the structure of proteins, that is primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary structure. So that's all about proteins. In the previous 2 classes, I have discussed about amino acids and peptides. So this is one complete unit, amino acids, peptides and proteins. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.